Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well today. I missed you guys. I've been looking forward to doing this review since I started reading this book last week, or early this week is what I meant. Anyway, this is a book review for a book that I have completely been recommended to like a billion times. And mind you, for people who are newer to the channel, if this happens to be one of the earlier reviews or the first ever review of mine that you've ever seen, I'm almost finished with the original classic 62 books from the 1990s series of Goosebumps. The original brand. And I've kind of jumped from series to series, read different things, and I wanted to get a lot of kind of books I didn't expect to be that great. I don't read the blurbs, but just from the covers, the ideas from the titles, I kind of wanted to get a lot of those out of the way, just so I could have books that I still look forward to review for this channel. And this is one that people in the community absolutely love, and for some reason, after reading this, I do not understand why this book is not in the reissues. I kind of do, because of how graphic it gets. Yes, I said that. I said the G word, graphic, with a Goosebumps book. It's not very often I can use that. There are some graphic Goosebumps books out there, like Ghost Camp, like You Can't Scare Me, like particularly Goosebumps Wanted the Haunted Mask, or Goosebumps Most Wanted Special Edition, whatever, Halloween, or Zombie Halloween. Yes, not Halloween Zombie, Zombie Halloween. There are books out there that have blood and gore. There are books out there that have, creepy stuff in there, really genuinely scary stuff. And this book is so different from any of those. As gruesome as it can be, as graphic as it can be, it's so different from any Goosebumps book I've read. And I think I've read at least 200. I don't know. I don't know for sure how many I've read and reviewed on the channel, but I've read a lot. I've read most of these books, and I think I'm like almost 3/4 of the way, somewhere in that ballpark, of reading the currently published Goosebumps books ever. Anyway, this one I've had recommended to me to death, from everybody from Grayson Goosebumps Kid to Goosebumps Completionist to Mr. Mortman, who I just recently talked to in some of his videos and whatnot. I think Austin from Monster Blood had talked about this. I don't know, a lot of my friends in the community had talked about this book, and I hadn't wanted to jump into it. I wanted to wait off, get a lot of stuff out of the way first that I wasn't as excited for as this book, because the one phrase people kept using with this was one that I love. Body horror. If you're a horror fan, you know of things like Cronenberg, you know of things like the Friday the 13th films that have some body horror in there. You know things like that. My personal favorite director is Nicholas Winding Refn, and when I see some of his films like Valhalla Rising or, the Pusher movies, or at least 2 and 3, Drive, Only God Forgives, different movies like that have some gore in there. Body horror can be slasher stuff too. Anyway, body horror is something that appeals to me because there's something about it that makes it horrific, especially when it's about a human being, you know? I just saw a movie called Life with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal in it yesterday. And that's a great example of some body horror. It wasn't a great flick, it was decent, but it had some body horror in there that really got to me. And I like that, and I appreciate that because it's something effective. You know, it really makes me feel something. Because I'm a dark-hearted human being, you know? This book is called Goosebumps number 61. I Live in Your Basement, and it is one of the most effective Goosebumps books and probably one of the creepiest Goosebumps books I've ever read in my life. I hate once again that this is out of print because more people should read this book. It's so good. My copy is not a regular old copy. Mine's like an Indian bootleg or something. I loved it. I absolutely loved the book. I want everybody to know that. Michael GoosebumpsFan loves I Live in Your Basement. I'm sad that I don't think there's a Goosebumps episode based on this. I wish there was, but they could have never done it the gracious duty that it deserved because of how horrific this book is. Think of the kind of moments that are scary and kind of gory in Welcome to Dead House, the original #1 book that came way before this, years before this book. That book that started off everything was very nightmarish. And this has traits of that. This has the traits of all the scary Goosebumps and gory Goosebumps out there. If you love those things, I promise you, no matter how many of these books that you've read, you have read nothing like this book. I will promise you. The best way for me to describe this before I get into the plot, it is a very, very psychological driven book. And I don't get many Goosebumps books that are like that. I love urban legend type stuff. This has a lot of that in it. And it worked in every way it possibly could have. I loved I Live in Your Basement. It is so good. It's so refreshing, man. Out of a lot of the middle-of-the-road, bland, decent books that I've read, above average, just slightly type books that I've read recently and reviewed here on the channel recently, this was so refreshing. And I feel like it's one of the very few books I'm going to have until I get to the Series 2000 books. Well, again, you know. Anyway, what is this book about? So, I Live in Your Basement starts off about a fellow named Marco, who was a young man, preteen, whatever. And he is basically in a household with his mom that his mom is very cautious, very worried. She always tells him, kind of like the same thing as A Christmas Story with Ralphie. You know, people tell Ralphie he can't get a BB gun for Christmas because he'll shoot his eye out, kid. A lot of people keep saying that to him. And Marco in this book's mom is very much like that. Everything she tells him not to do, it's kind of annoying. Constantly she's warning him about getting hurt or killed or somehow. And one day he decides to play baseball with some friends. And he goes out there, and one particular girl named Gwenny, I think is her name, is going to, she's a huge girl by the way, she goes to play baseball, hits the bat, and accidentally misses and cracks Marco upside the head. And Marco passes out and basically, I guess, goes into like a coma for a little while. They don't use the word coma, but that's basically what happened to him. She KO'd him, and he's out for a while. I don't know how long he was out. I don't think the book ever really says. I could be wrong. It feels like it could have been weeks, or days, or a week, or something like that. It feels like it could have been a while. Anyway, he wakes up, his mom is crying and upset, and the doctor is a little weird. The doctor's got this attitude of not really wanting to answer the question of, am I going to be okay? And Marco's a little stressed by that. Marco has a little bit of a worry about that. Anyway, he eventually gets to go home, I think the next day or so. He goes home after he's discharged from the hospital, and when he gets upstairs, his phone starts ringing in his room. He's wondering why his mom is not answering the phone downstairs. So young kids out there, in case you don't happen to know this or don't happen to have a house phone, because most people don't have house phones anymore, if you don't have one, basically back in the day you could have a phone in every single room, and if one person answered down in the basement, some person could answer upstairs, and you would both be on the line at the same time. You've probably seen that in some old movies. It doesn't happen very often anymore because everybody has a cell phone now. I kind of miss those old times, but I kind of don't. The limitations sucked. Anyway, so he answers the phone, and there's a young man on the phone with a creepy voice who says his name is Keith. And he's kind of asking Marco, like, are you okay? Are you doing fine? And he's a little weirded out. He's like, you know, yeah, I'm fine. And the Keith guy on the phone says something terribly urban legend spooky. He says something to the effect of, I'm glad you're feeling better. I live in your basement, and now you're going to take care of me. And when I read that, mind you, I read these books as they are. I don't read blurbs. I don't go into it expecting anything aside from the picture on the cover of the book and maybe some familiarity, whatever the word is, from episode adaptations or what I've heard, little fragments online. I didn't know this was going to happen with the Keith kid, even though the title says I live in your basement. I expected a monster in the basement, not some person. There was something as an adult. It might not get you youngins out there as much as it gets me, but as an adult, as a young man who lives in his first house, there's something terrifying of the idea of another human being being in your basement. It's one thing if it's a monster, it's one thing if it's whatever, but the idea of another person hiding out in your basement and talking to you through a phone, very much like the new Joe Hill phone movie, Black Phone. Something like that idea gets to me deeply. There's a movie called The Strangers that came out in 2008. It got to me deeply too. There's something about invaders or intruders that there's something about that. It just really, really gets to me as a young person at this age now. And that idea of this kid being in this basement is creepy. It's genuinely scary, I think. The book itself, with the events and the plot itself unfolding of who is this Keith kid? Why is he calling me from the basement? Why does my mom not know who he is? How has she never seen him down there if she goes down to do laundry or whatever? All of that culminates into a story that's really good. However, this is the thing. It's a very, as I said, psychologically focused book. So for example, if you hate dream sequence stuff, this book has a lot of that. I'll be honest with you. It's not a big spoiler, but a lot of this book can be that. And you never know when it's going to kick in either. It kind of has an ending that I don't know how I feel about. In one respect, how it was written in another book that I read recently, I really hated that ending. But the way it's written here, it kind of accommodates the dreamlike, nightmarish atmosphere and the design of this story. It really worked for this. It's so bizarre to me how Stein can write literally the exact same ending of another book I recently read that I hated the ending of, and it kind of ruined that book for me. It was amazing to me how he could take that exact same type of ending and do it better here. I Live in Your Basement is a masterpiece. Now let me get to the body horror stuff. I don't want to tell you too much. But the events involving the monster, or Keith in this case, are horrific. They are some of the most gruesome, graphic, eerie imagery I've ever seen in my life. I haven't seen them, but you know what I mean. Like, read anywhere, experienced anywhere in any kind of media. To be a middle grade book, this was extremely effective. This feels like what's leading right into the next series, Series 2000. After GOIG had existed and had some scary books. The original series has quite a few scary books that I really like Ghost Camp, You Can't Scare Me. This book is number, 61? Yeah, there's one more book before this series ended back in the day. Monster Blood 4 came out after this. And the fact that this book was as frightening as it was, for me as a young man, I can only imagine what it'd be like to be a kid and read this book. I really couldn't, because it's gruesome, man. There's some great body horror in here, and I've heard people say that constantly. But it had nothing. Those comments from friends of mine on like the Discord and whatnot had nothing in regard to how the level of the content here. Like, I don't have words for it. It's hard to find books like this in the kids' realm of entertainment, especially in Goosebumps. In Goosebumps, there's some great scary stuff out there, some great body horror out there, some great gore and slasher stuff and all that. There is some really good stuff in Goosebumps that I love, and I've reviewed a lot of that content here on my channel. But this book hit a different way, man. I don't think I've ever read a book that had the psychological aspect to it like this book had. And again, that dreamlike feel to it, that nightmare texture to it, it really worked. It didn't feel like Stein wrote the book. It was very different from what I'm used to him writing like, and it's kind of like he was tinkering around with a little bit of something different. I really loved this. It was a great, once again, refreshing read that I've never experienced something like this in a Goosebumps book, much less really anywhere else. The idea that comes from this book is very urban legend-like, and I love urban legends, so that really hit me in a way that it probably won't impress most people. I know it's hard to find a copy of, and I know a lot of people don't want these Indian knockoff copies, but if you can find a copy of I Live in Your Basement, even at your library, or an Indian copy if you want to try it out for a decent small price, I recommend it. It's a great read. It is absolutely phenomenal. I love it. Again, with an ending that I usually trash that works really great here, there's nothing to complain about with this. Yeah, maybe there's too many dream sequences involved for a 110-page long story, but everything from the pacing of it is even better than most Goosebumps books. It was actually addictive to read. I've loved it. It was so much fun. I flew through it when I had the free time this week. Some nights I came home from work, I didn't feel like reading. Too bogged down with too much going on from work psychologically and mentally. A lot of stress, you know. But this was just phenomenal. I loved it. I cannot recommend it enough. It's probably one of the best books I've ever read from Goosebumps, and I mean that deeply. I've said that about a lot of books, but this is one of the top tier for me. It's great. I don't know if it'd make it into like my top 10, maybe not even my top 15, but it's great. I really loved it. It's way up my alley. If you love things like Silent Hill, this is for you. Really, really for you. What did you think about I Live in Your Basement? Have you read it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Put all your thoughts and comments down below, folks. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this read if you've read it before. Great cover, great creature, or monster, or person, Keith, whatever he is. I loved it. It was phenomenal. It was such a good read, and I'll never read anything like it probably ever again from Goosebumps. It's probably the last of the great gruesome body horror books as far as I know. I haven't read many Series 2000 books. I've read like 5. But I can't see them being as great or dark as this, even though Series 2000 traditionally is kind of dark. This is wonderful. I loved it. Anyway, what are your thoughts on I Live in Your Basement? Put your thoughts and comments down below once again. Thank you guys for watching, and if I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, I don't have anything to hate about it. I'm going to give it my best. 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. It was so good, and I would love to see this if Disney would, as much as I hate Disney and don't want to get it Disney Plus for the new show, if they're going to make it. I would love to see this get adapted in a good way. I would love to see this get adapted into a great, scary, frightening show that could really get under people's skin. I want it to be as horrific as this episode was, or this book was. This was a major shock to me about how good it was, and I hope you guys love it as much as I do. Anyway, put your thoughts and comments down below once again. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you. Check out the book. Please spend the money on it. If you're going to collect any Goosebumps book whatsoever and you're very picky about these books, if you see this for 30 bucks, buy it. I promise you, you won't regret it. If you're into body horror, if you're into psychology stuff, or psychological stuff with storytelling, pick it up. It's really great. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. God bless you. Goodbye.